You got a friend in me. When the road gets rough ahead and you're miles and miles from your nice warm bed, you guys remember what your old pal said, 'cause you got a friend in me. Boop, ba-doop, ba-doop.
That's just a clue to what you get to listen to in just a few minutes. So, welcome to our youth podcast. We're glad that you decided to come and watch with us and enjoy us being silly, but also talking about things that matter. Let me give you a few announcements for youth ministry purposes, and then we'll go to a discussion question, and then we will play our game called OK Gen Z. Except it's about boomers, not Gen Z. Go figure. So our weekly schedule for while we are quarantined for the coronavirus stuff, Tuesdays at 7. Every Tuesday at 7, we'll release one of these youth podcasts. And then Wednesdays at 7, we'll release a worship service. It'll be kind of a guided worship service where we'll have some worship songs, some guided prayer time, and then a devotional at the end. On Thursdays at noon to 1 o'clock, we are having our Zoom lunch. Be looking out for some advertising on that, because I think what we're going to do is promo a certain meal. So maybe like grilled cheese, and then everybody shows up with their sort of style of grilled cheese, and maybe we'll vote and see who wins and give their team 1,000 house points or something. We'll see. Fridays, you'll have one of these lovely people, or some that are not in the youth podcast, check in on you and just make sure you're doing okay, see if they can pray for you in any certain way. So be looking out for that. And then on Sundays, we have our worship live stream at 11, and then our youth Bible study at 5 p.m. on Zoom. So you can be looking out for those things. Two kind of, this isn't really a youth ministry announcement, but something I just want to encourage you with. One, remember to check in on one another. I know that not everybody can participate in all of the things when we do all of the things, but make sure and remember those of your people that are scattered across our community, hanging out in their homes and probably being just as bored as you are. Check on them, in on them, love on them, see how you can be praying for them, and just kind of keep the community going as far as communication goes, at least, because that's pretty much all that we can do. And if you have any needs, give us a call. Let me know. Let any of us know. If your family has a need, we are ready to serve our community as always. And so if there's anything that we can do to help out, make sure and reach out to us and let us know. And then finally, don't let this time of quarantine and this time of not having school and not having a lot of sort of what normal life gives us be wasted spiritually. And so what I mean by that is I hope you'll take this time. It's kind of what I encouraged you with a few weeks ago, but make sure that you are using this time to maybe start something new spiritually. Maybe you've never really been much of a Bible reader. Maybe you can start reading your Bible. Or maybe you haven't ever spent a whole lot of time just spending time before God in prayer or scripture memory or journaling, or there's all sorts of things that you can be doing to invest in your own spiritual life. And so I just kind of want to challenge you to make sure that you are thinking of whatever that is and making that investment now, because normal life will come at some point. It may not be as normal as what it was before coronavirus, but time will come when we will have school and we'll get busy again, and we find ways to get busy even whenever we're told to stay in our homes and only go out for groceries and stuff. We still find ways to be busy. So take this time and be intentional about using it to invest in your own spiritual life. And maybe it's time to invest in the spiritual lives of your family members. And so I want to challenge you to think about it that way too. So that's all the announcements we have. I'm going to throw up a discussion question for you. Take a look at that for about a minute, and then we will come back and do our game. Hey, welcome back. We are going to play OK Gen Z. So, how this works, contestants, is I will say a question, and as soon as you know the answer, actually, let me say all the choices first. And then after I say the last word of the last choice, then you can buzz in. And whoever buzzes in first, yeah, like that. And whoever buzzes in first gets to attempt to answer it. If not, if it's wrong, then the other two get to buzz in.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I'm
Keep
gonna
your own
lose.
score. Don't be a cheater. All right, here we go. Okay, Gen Z. Why is this generation called boomers? A sudden spike in the birth of babies? Nuclear explosions of World War II? A popular song? Or how rich they were? Andrew got it.
It's the sudden jumping baby being born.
Yes.
The
A.
baby.
Correct.
Yes.
A sudden
Hey.
spike in the birth of
There you
babies.
go. I can remember how it's worded. That's why they're called
Okay.
baby boomers.
Baby
but
boomers.
boomers for short.
Exactly.
'Cause they all
Alright.
came back from World War II.
Agreed. Okay, so question number 2. All boomers remember this. You're disqualified. All boomers remember this famous star, Mr. Ed. Who was he? A DJ? An animated character?
What up, Mr. Ed?
A talking horse?
Just
Or
imagine that in the 50s.
A variety show host? Jordan, you got it.
A variety show host.
No clue.
Yep, you got it.
A talking horse.
A talking horse, Mr. Ed.
Beep,
the
beep, beep,
talking horse.
Now I'm confused.
Mr. Ed, the talking horse DJ.
I want to leave.
I'm out.
Is he like a centaur?
Peace.
You know, it was basically a man who put on a rubber horse mask and like DJ'd.
So basically,
kidding.
what happened in the past, what happens now?
Yeah.
Pretty much. History has come full circle.
I'm guessing the horse mask back then was a little more horrifying.
Probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay, question number 3. What song would television networks play to signal the end of the programming day? Good Night, Irene, The Star Spangled Banner, America the Beautiful, or the Armed Forces Medley? What you got, Dakota?
The Star Spangled Banner.
You are right. Good job.
I had no clue.
Those patriotic boomers
I know. Just love their country. Gosh.
and their spangled banner.
And moving on. What was the name of a popular boy's hairstyle in the 1950s? The duck wing, the duck tail, the duck bomb, or the duck dodger? What you got?
It got stuck. The duck tail.
The duck tail is correct.
How many points do I have? Trace.
I have one.
I have 3 points.
Settle. Because you didn't know who Mr. Ed was.
The duck tail.
Which of the following was a popular bicycle accessory for boomers? A banana seat, an apple seat, a kiwi seat, or a pineapple seat? Ooh, Jordan.
Banana seat.
A banana seat. You are correct. Jordan is on the scoreboard.
I have a
Banana unana.
I have a disadvantage. The goose takes time after I press the button.
Get a better goose, man.
No.
This school drill was made popular during the 1950s. Active shooter drill, lockdown drill, fire drill, or atomic bomb drill.
You can have it, Dakota.
I'm gonna go with the atomic.
The atomic
No, it is
bomb.
wrong.
Atomic bomb.
It's not the
No, it's the
atomic.
atomic
The
bomb.
abominable bomb.
The atomic tom.
Stop making fun of me for not being able to speak.
Tom came in with his atomics.
Atomic bomb drill.
You are correct, sir. Good job.
When we do the intro video, you need to put at the bottom of his name, Atomic Tom.
Oh, remind me to do that tomorrow. Okay. Which of the following took place as boomers were growing up? Strike, World War II, Challenger explosion, or Woodstock? Ooh. What you got?
The Challenger explosion.
Nope.
Boo!
Woodstock?
Woodstock. You are correct. Music
Boom.
aficionado. All right. What genre?
I only listen to Christian music, Brian.
You're a fibber. What genre of music was created during the baby boom? Rock and roll, country, hip hop, or R&B? What you got?
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll, baby.
Challenger explosion.
No. A popular TV show for boomers was I Love Lucy. What was the name of Lucy's friend? Myrtle, Arnie, Ethel, or Frankie? I knew that one. What you got?
Ethel?
Ethel. Yep.
I thought the question was going to be, what was the name of the main character?
And I love Lucy.
George.
And the final question. Get your fingers ready. Which of the following numbers takes the longest to dial on a rotary phone? 0, 1, 5, or 9? What you got?
9.
False.
What? I am sad.
What you got?
The pound sign.
You mean the hashtag?
It's hashtag Andrew.
The hashtag.
Hey,
oh
this
my
is
gosh.
this is boomer game.
Oh, my bad.
Mhm.
It's 0.
A 0.
I
You
had a
are
rotary
correct.
phone growing up.
So you knew.
Yeah.
That is it.
Oh.
Good job, my people.
Yeah.
that's right.
Okay,
Oh,
I understand
okay.
now. I
All right.
1, 2,
remember.
3,
Got
4,
it.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0.
0 is at the end.
Okay,
Yep.
so who ended up with the most points?
I had
4.
I had Quattro.
It was me. I had 1.
It's
I am
golf.
number 1.
It's golf. Jordan wins.
I had Quattro points.
Good job. Okay, so what we've learned today is that Jordan needs to beef up her relationship with older people, and Dakota and Andrew, you're doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. Doing average. You know, maybe a little bit above average.
If it was 5, it was average. But we're both
Yeah,
subpar.
we're a little
just
below
a
average.
little below. Okay, well, thanks for joining us for OK Gen Z. Give us a minute. Use this discussion question to have a good conversation at home, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and we are going to have a discussion about why a relationship with people of an older generation is important. And so, this is something that, if you're a teenager watching, that you can take and apply to your own life. For those of you that may be a part of that older generation, maybe you can help the young ones. Not quite. Maybe you can help the younger ones develop that relationship with you or with others, with maybe their grandparents or something like that. But that's what we're going to talk about today. So to start things off, how have older generations or people of older generations impacted your life spiritually? I'll go ahead and start so you can kind of think about it a little bit. For me, I come from both sides of my family have sort of a faith legacy of people generations back following Jesus and going to church and being believers. And so, while it's practiced very differently among all of those generations that follow Jesus, I mean, I remember at one point that we went to church with my grandparents on my mom's side, and my great mom was there, and they were there, and my mom and dad were there, and we were there. And so there's 4 generations of worshipers, and all of us preferred to worship very differently. But we all followed the same Jesus, and the same Jesus called us to live our lives the way that we tried our best to live them. So that's kind of, for me, that's something that's always been valuable. And then here at our church too, some of my most treasured relationships with people here at our church are people that are 2 or 3 times my age, because of just their willingness to love on me and encourage me, even though they know that I'm a big dummy, and they will serve alongside of me, and those relationships are just hard to come by. So I think my grandparents and then just in the faith community, they just have all kind of been a huge encouragement in my walk with Jesus.
I think for me, it's kind of the same. My family on both sides has a faith legacy, but the 2 people that came to mind when I heard that question was my mentor in high school. She was not much older than my parents, but she was my favorite person. She took me under her wing in junior high and called me by my preferred name, which was AJ at the time. And she treated me like a little sister versus
That's cool.
a student. And our relationship from junior high through high school was I would go to her if I had a problem. And I was at church, I was like, Deborah, you got to help me out.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. Or she would sit me down and be like, Jordan, you're being stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked the conversations that we had with her. And every now and then she'll still check up on me. And then I think of my grandmother on my mom's side, or my mom's mother. And we would go to their house in the summer. It was Houston, so it was kind of miserable outside, but it was nice inside. And I would wake up at 6 a.m. to the smell of coffee.
Yeah.
And then about an hour later, I'd go out because once you're a kid and you wake up, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no going back to sleep. I'd go out and she'd be on her little wicker couch with her wicker table, and she'd have her Bible out and her cup of coffee and a bunch of highlighters and her plants all around her. To this day, when I think of heroes of the faith, my heroes of the faith, I think of my grandmother in her chair reading her Bible.
Yeah.
And she's got such a quiet fierceness to her.
Mm-hmm.
She is simultaneously the most gentle and fierce person I know, which I admire greatly about her. And fierceness when it comes to her faith, not people.
Yeah.
She is sassy, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, I have similar kind of feelings and thoughts about my grandparents on my dad's side. I get to, because they've lived in Texas all my life, and generally about 5 to 10 minutes down the road from me, we spent a lot of time with them. And when I got my driver's license, we would often go out there to drink coffee, eat donuts, and at some point in the conversation talk about Jesus. And that's always been a huge blessing to me, for sure. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just kind of, with my dad being a pastor and being in churches, his first pastoral position in Midland, Texas, he eventually became the senior adult pastor kind of thing. And so we got to hang out with a bunch of the senior adults and just kind of being adopted as like this kind of like grandchild for all of them. And you have, you automatically get like 50, 60 sets of grandparents. And,
right.
That was just kind of my entire church experience from high school, even through college, and even now in ministry. There's always been kind of that couple or that person who's a senior adult or who's older than me, a generation away, that kind of takes you under their wing or takes special interest in you and wants to pray for you and watch out for you and check up on you. And I think that we all have kind of a natural inclination to take care of younger people. I think most of us, and so that's kind of what I see. But I think for me, my grandmother, my dad's mom, is super influential in my life. Just always been a champion in the faith and a prayer warrior. She was kind of the first person that when she said she was going to pray for something, that I actually believed that she was going to pray for it. And just always, she kind of comes in clutch with her phone calls. You're having a hard time, and grandmother calls. But
in the spirit.
Yeah, and she's 90 years old now, and you wouldn't know it by looking at her or seeing her get around. And I remember Danielle and I had just got married, and she was probably 85, 86 at the time. And Danielle had a job. She had to commute for an hour, and so we'd go to bed really early. About 9 o'clock, we'd be in bed. And I remember I get a phone call at like 11:30 at night. And it was my grandmother. Well, of course I answered it because I'm like, oh, great, something's happened to grandmother. And I pick up the phone. She's like, hey, Andrew, how are you? I'm like, I'm sleeping, grandmother. What's going on? And she was at a revival at her church that had been going all day. And so that's just kind of her. Like, she doesn't let anything slow her down, and she just keeps trucking along, especially if it's going on at her church. You can pretty much guarantee that she's going to be there. The lady who used to play piano in her Sunday school class wasn't there anymore, so she started playing piano in the Sunday school class. And just,
that's cool.
That was a huge influence in my life, and not so much, this theological giant, so to speak, but just really firm and steadfast in the basics of the faith, of praying, being consistent, sharing the gospel, being honest with people. And that's been a huge influence for me.
That's awesome. What you got?
So for me, growing up in this church, I've basically been known by all the older people because they're friends with my mom or friends with my grandparents. So they all know me, but in particular, I'd say Miss Ethel. She passed 5 years ago now, 5 or 6. I don't know. I don't remember. But she was basically like a second grandma to me. Whenever my mom was doing children's church and I was too old to go, I'd go sit with her and, just her and Mr. John, just see how faithful they were to, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
But
I'm glad you brought them up because I hadn't thought of them as a part of this conversation, but she's definitely one of those that she just embraced you whether you wanted it or not. Which was a great quality. I think Miss Linda Anderson is a little bit like that for me too. But there's a lot of people in our church, but Miss Ethel was definitely one of them, and she's partying with Jesus now, so we'll get to see her when we get to glory. So with that being said, why do teenagers need relationships with older people? We talked about how it's been good for us, but why do our teenagers need relationships with the older generations?
First off, and most importantly, they do know more than you. They know more than us. They may not always know the best process or the quickest way to do things, but you can pretty much always guarantee that the way or the process they're telling you is going to be tried and true in some form or fashion, because they've been there, or maybe they've already cut the corners before and they've seen the 5-year outcome of that. But and even just we're all related to someone who's older than us. Just naturally, but if you go back, look at your kindergarten teacher, your first grade teacher, your high school teachers now. Like, we depend on them for a lot. And to just, I think that it's foolish for us to get to a point to say we don't need them anymore because I know a lot now, because they always are going to know more than us
Yeah.
and have more experience and have more wisdom. I mean, we can't just discard them because we have a hard time relating to them.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think you mentioned a good point that just because something is difficult, like relating to someone who's, several generations older than you, doesn't mean that it's not worth it. Yeah.
To kind of go off that, when you're younger, especially right after you graduate high school, you think you know everything. You think you're all that in a
Truth.
bag of chips, as Chris Atkins says. But it's just nice to have someone you can lean on when you don't know what you're doing and you don't
Yeah.
know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
To have someone to go to, or just to, even if you don't want to listen to them, just talk to them.
Yeah. Sure.
Because there's plenty of times I've done that and just not listened.
Yeah, in my young adulthood, that was a very formative thing for me because I had, I'm kind of I think a pretty typical relationship with my parents, and so they were telling me what I needed to do and kind of getting me on the straight and narrow and stuff like that, and but Gran and Granddad, just kind of this, and my grandmama and Pawpaw, but I saw my Gran and Granddad a lot more. It was just kind of this open, I'm proud of you. I want to talk to you. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I told you so. It's just it was a very open, free place to go. That's cool. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've noticed that the older generations are usually the first people to open their arms and embrace you. Like first, they're the first ones to do it. They're the ladies here, the older ladies here at this church. When I first came on as the secretary, they just went like this, and I was not expecting it at all. And I'm a strange person. I understand this. I'm a weird person. And I have weird hair, weirder
You're an
hair.
awesome person.
And I remember Miss Judy Nichols. She saw my undercut and she went, "Oh, that is so cool!" And she just felt it, and I was, like it was just and her and Mary Baggett and a couple of the other ladies have just taken me under their wings without me like initiating anything. Which I've noticed that's a pattern.
That's awesome.
Well, and I mean, even the Bible verse that says, "Greater love knows no one than this, that he who would lay down his life for his friends." And I mean, the older generation, other than your parents, were the first to sacrifice of themselves and their times for you.
Yeah.
Especially in the faith community. Getting older and understanding age in my life now. I know some people watch this and say, "What are you talking about? You don't know age." But
Yeah, youngin'.
And being a minister and knowing the lives and the hardships that some of our Sunday school teachers and our children's church workers go through, but they still show up with a smile on their face to love on kids. Like, don't forget that those people did that for you when you were 5 and annoying.
Right.
And didn't listen
By
to
the way, you were
anything.
annoying when you were 5. You think
they,
you were cute, but you weren't.
They still loved you and were there for you and wanted you to have a good time and wanted to nurture your relationship with the Lord. And even outside of the faith community, so many people have laid down their lives for the community, for other people. And don't forget, just because you don't agree with them on, everything across the board, socially, ethically, religiously, don't just write them off, because they were the ones, regardless of where you are now, that were formative in who you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And remember those things.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So for our last question, let's just get a little bit practical. How can teenagers meet the older generation where they are and cultivate those relationships? We talk a lot about, and I do believe that senior adults, we really need senior adults to initiate, because they're coming from the place of, I don't know a better word to say this, but from the place of power. They really have the ability to come in and. But how can a teenager? What are some ways a teenager can sort of cultivate and meet a senior adult where they are?
I think one thing is don't isolate yourself to one part of the church.
Ooh, yeah.
Um,
Meaning
that was-
this room, by the way,
meaning
guys.
this room, youth room. Don't isolate yourself here. This is not the only place on this campus that people gather. And I noticed, I say notice, whenever I was a teenager, and this was my parents' fault, so I blame them. It's a good blame. They made me be involved in the church. I didn't get to just hang out in the youth room.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go serve whenever we did breakfasts for the community, or whenever we would do something for the senior citizens of that particular city that we were in. I was involved. I was
Yeah.
forced to be involved, but I think it's even more special when you choose to be involved.
Right. Praise God for that. That's awesome.
I totally agree with you. You know, senior adults come from this place of power, but I think younger generation, especially teenagers, you know sometimes that you have the power to manipulate relationships with the way that you carry yourselves.
Wow.
Whether you want to admit that or not, when you walk into a room full of senior adults and you look mad at the world, they don't want to approach you. And that
Sure.
may be your scheme. That may be your game. I'm
Mhm.
going to look super unapproachable because I don't want anybody to talk to me. But I think it's just, honestly, it's forming a relationships with older generations, senior adults, whatever you want to call it. It's the same across the board as every other relationship. You have to meet people where they are.
Right.
And you can't walk into a conversation with somebody from a different generation and assume them to understand all of the slang or music or TV shows that you watch, but just try to get to know them as a person.
Right.
I can't tell you how important it is to just remember their name.
Yes.
And the next
Yes.
time you see them, be the one who initiates and say, "Hey, Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so,
Mhm.
like, it's good to see you today."
Yeah.
Like that kind of solidifies that confidence from them that, okay, I can now approach this person, this
Right.
child, this teenager, because they've created a safe space that says, yes, I accept this relationship. I respect you as a person.
Yeah.
And don't treat somebody who's 80 years old like they're 15. Like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
just like you wouldn't treat somebody who's 15 like they're 80 years old.
Right.
Like,
Mhm.
we have to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
And love them for who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Respect the fact they've been on this earth for a little bit longer than you have. You know.
Right.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is that basically forming up a relationship with somebody of an older generation is pretty much like forming up a relationship with anyone.
mhm.
That it's about actually loving and
Yeah.
caring about them, and of course there's ways that we serve senior adults differently than we would our peer or something. There's some different sort of, I guess, strategies, but the overarching thing that is important in all relationships is actually loving and caring about that
Yeah.
person. Man, that's strong.
Yeah. Well, and I hate the excuse in my years of doing student ministry. I hated the excuse that teenagers would give me. Oh, we don't have anything in common. And I always wanted to tell them, like, do you desire a relationship? Yes. Do they desire a relationship? Yes. Okay, there's one thing that you
Yeah.
have in common.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't just say, well, they don't like the same music as I do. They don't laugh at my jokes. Well, find something that'll make them laugh.
Right.
Find the music that they like to
Mhm.
listen to. Create common ground if you can't find any.
Mhm.
And this, like, well, I tried to talk to them once and they didn't have anything to say, so they don't like me. Like, boo.
Yeah.
They might be shy.
Yeah.
They might be a little different than you.
Mm-hmm.
They might be uncomfortable in the situation you put them in.
Right.
Like, are you analyzing yourself, or are you just taking the easy road out by saying, that was hard, so I'm not
Sure.
going to talk to him anymore?
Yeah, that's strong. Good. Dakota, did you have anything you want to throw in there?
Nope.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question that I think you can answer easily. How do you, because I think, we've been kind of talking generally and in church life, but what are some of the things that you do to cultivate your relationship with your grandparents?
I mean, for them, it's just spending some time with them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
coming up to their house, sitting watching westerns with them.
Yeah, that's the good stuff right there. Yeah, yeah. I think that's huge. I think that just being willing to carve out time. That's one of the things that we all kid ourselves into thinking that we are too busy for people, and pardon the phrase, but that's just bullcrap. It's not. We're not too busy for people, and I mean, y'all know me better than a lot of people. I use that excuse. So I'm preaching to myself, that I have, I'm sorry I don't have time. I'm so busy with all these stupid little things, But the truth is that we really do. If we care about somebody, we will make time.
Yeah.
And if we don't care about them, then we won't. And so we really have to if we're not willing to spend time with a person of an older generation, then we really need to do self-reflection before we say why it's their fault. I guess is maybe a good way to say it. Cool. I think that was a fruitful discussion. I hope a lot of teenagers watch this because I think it's going to be really valuable for them to think about and ponder on. And just know that we really believe that your life will be better if you have strong relationships with older generations. And really that goes back to why we do this podcast. It goes back to Jesus because the message, the good news of Jesus has been passed down generation from generation from generation. And so that generation, some of those that have the good news of Jesus and have passed it down faithfully so that you got it. And so, be grateful for that. But also maybe you don't have that person in your life. Maybe one day you are going to be that person. You're going to be that person that's 3 times as old as the teenage kid that's sitting down the pew from you, and you're going to pass on the faith to somebody else. Yeah. And so you can change your family tree faith-wise also. So the older generations are incredibly important. God makes that very clear in His Word. And so we want to challenge you, think about that. But also remember, this is a gospel-centered podcast. We're talking about things that relate to Jesus, and that absolutely has its foundation in passing the faith along in family. And so if you don't have a relationship with Jesus, if that faith has not been passed on to you, we want to pass it on to you. Jesus died on the cross for us. He rose again 3 days later, showing that He is the conqueror of death. He is the victor of all victors, the Lord of all lords, the King of all kings, and He is worthy of us following Him. We've sinned, we've fallen short, but He's made a way through His death and resurrection so that we can have life in Him, we can have eternity in Him, and we can begin eternal life right now. And so I want to challenge you and encourage you. If this is the first time you've ever heard that message, reach out to us, message us, let us know, because we want to help you. We want to lead you to Jesus because He truly is the way, the truth, and the life. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.